All right. Well, welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. Ana Gonzalez. I am the chair of this subcommittee. I want to welcome everyone to this space. I'm going to hand it over really quick to Justin for a roll call.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Carrie Akimi Hernandez, Lisa Marie Alvarado,
Present.
David Acevedo, Gloria Huerta,
Present.
Peggy Martinez,
Present.
Andres Ramirez, Michelle Rousey,
Present.
Randy Torres Van Vleck, Howard Wong, Chair Ana Gonzalez,
Present.
and I see that member Akimi Hernandez has joined, so I'm going to promote Carrie now.
I wasn't mentioned.
Martha Armit Kelly,
Present.
All right.
Carrie Akimi Hernandez,
Here.
Chair, we have quorum.
All right. Thank you so much, Justin. Um, I'm looking for the language for the land acknowledgement, or should I just acknowledge the land that we are sitting on for each member that wants to share? Or
We can do either way. I can go ahead and share my screen with the land acknowledgement on it, or if you would prefer for each member to share individually, that's okay too.
yeah, if we can pull it up on the screen and then I can read it quickly and then we can have members share their space if they want to share. Thanks,
Thank you,
Camille.
Chair.
Can you see this?
Yes, thank you. So at this time, we are going to do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we now call California is the ancestral lands of the over 109 nations, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep reciprocal relationship with the land as its original stewards. Their ways, methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with indigenous communities and are committed to partnering and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. Our transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and future. We embrace our past with a future commitment to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls this state home. And at this time, I want to acknowledge the Inland Empire, also known as the Inland Valley, home of the Tongva, Luiseño, Quiche, and Serrano peoples. If any other members want to share where they're calling from, leave it open. I see EAC Chair Martha.
Good afternoon. Calling from Stanislaus. I want to recognize the Thule, Yokuts, and Miwok tribes. I'm in Stanislaus today in the land of the Thule, Miwok, and Yokut. Thank you.
Thank you. I see member Carrie Akimi Hernandez.
Thank you. I am currently on Misho Wapo, Patwin, Pomo, and Ohlone land, also known as Napa.
Thank you. And also recognize Peggy Martinez.
Hi, I am on Yurok, land here in Arcata.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share? All right. Yes. Do we need public comment for this item, or are we moving on to public comments?
I can let you know that we didn't have a request to comment on that item.
All right, awesome. Thank you. So we're now on tab 3, public comment on non-agenda items. Do we have any commenters?
Just a reminder to the public, if you wish to comment, you can use the virtual raise hand feature or submit a written comment. And Chair, at this time, I don't see any requests to comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now moving to tab 4, adoption of August meeting minutes. They were attached in our packet. And I guess if folks want to take some time to read the minutes, otherwise we'll entertain a motion to adopt. And I see member Peggy.
Oh, I don't know how to unraise my hand. I don't.
Oh.
So if you want to take my hand down.
Raise hand.
Thank you.
Okay. Member Michelle Rousey, you had your hand up.
Yeah, make a motion to approve the August minutes.
All right, we have a motion from Michelle Rousey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. At this time, Justin, do you want to call roll for approval?
Yes, we'll do. Carrie Kimi Hernandez.
Aye.
Lisa Marie Alvarado.
Aye.
David Acevedo. Gloria Huerta.
Aye.
Peggy Martinez.
Aye.
Andres Ramirez. Michelle Rousey.
Aye.
Randy Torres Van Vleck. Howard Wong. Chair Ana Gonzalez.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes.
All right. Thank you all. Do we have any public comments on this item?
I'm not seeing any requests to comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move right along to tab number 5, Caltrans Transit Policy and Implementation Plan. And we're going to hand it over to Hannah Walter. Welcome.
Hi, all. Thanks for having me. My name is Hannah Walter, and I'm a Deputy Division Chief in the Division of Transportation Planning. And would you like me to share my screen for this presentation, Camille?
If you could, that'd be great.
Okay. Let me put it in that mode there. Bear with me one second here.
Hold up. Audio now unmuted. Hold Y, lower hand. And now.
Can I ask something? Can I ask something really quick? Peggy Martinez here. Thank you. I missed the introduction. I'm trying to silence my screen reader, and whilst trying to silence it, I missed the introduction on the presentation, the presenter. So I'm going to turn off my screen reader and hopefully it'll be quiet. Thank you very much.
Hold Y, raise hand. Hand now lower.
Okay, hand lowered and.
I'm trying to make it so that I can see my presentation and you all at the same time. So so bear with me.
Hannah, while you do that, do you mind just introducing your name and your title for the
Oh,
group?
sure. So my name is Hannah Walter, and I'm a Deputy Division Chief in the Division of Transportation Planning at Caltrans. And it looks like I've almost got this figured out. Think. Okay. I'm not used to using this application. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Well, I thank you for having me. Look forward to talking to you about this. And I wanted to give you an update on what we're doing around transit at Caltrans, opportunities for you to be involved in our continued development of transit implementation that we're doing post SB 960, and just give you an update on the transit policy. I wanted to point out that we're working on transit in a lot of different areas at Caltrans, in the director's office, in maintenance and operations, in project delivery with design guidance and asset management, and in planning where we're working on various plans like the policy and shortly to follow the implementation plan. There's some policies that have laid the groundwork for transit, the Director's Policy 36 on road safety and Director's Policy 37 on complete streets. Both of those things spoke to transit, and now we have the new Director's Policy that we're working on, talking about Caltrans's vision for transit in the department. So how are we really going to try to implement this? Because I'll talk about the comments we got on the transit policy in a minute, but overall the transit policy has stayed, the message of it has stayed the same, which is that we're committing to building transit infrastructure on the state highway system in partnership with our stakeholders. And so how are we really going to do that? The vehicle that we're using to do that is the district transit plans. And so those are plans that we're developing in coordination with the districts and the transit agencies to look at transit needs in each district. And where we're at is that we finalized the vision and goals in this last year. And those goals are here on the slide: reliability and service, access, customer experience, resilience and sustainability, and equity. And so we agreed that that's what we're trying to get at with these plans. And then we also finalized a needs assessment methodology where we're looking at the existing conditions in each district. We're looking at prioritizing the needs, and we're taking the transit agency priorities into account when we do that. And then we're looking at developing solutions. So a lot of where we're trying to figure out what we need to do where is happening through the district transit plans. And those are underway. And we'll keep working on them in 2026, and we should finish them in 2027. So that's one opportunity for involvement. We have public meetings as part of the district transit plans. For transit priority facilities, I just wanted to make a slide on this. One thing that we're doing is we're trying to understand what eligible fund sources does Caltrans have that can fund transit. And so we're looking at like the SHOP, the Transit and Intercity Rail Program, SB1 programs. What are the programs out there that we can use to fund transit and what's eligible in each of those programs? We're trying to understand that right now. And then we're also looking at within that context, what kind of transit infrastructure might Caltrans build on the state highway system? And this definition, transit priority facilities, is in the transit policy, and it's also in the draft State Highway System Management Plan. And it includes examples are transit only lanes, queue jump lanes at intersections, traffic signal priority for transit, bus stop configurations, like bus bulb outs and bus on shoulder lanes. So those are just some examples of the kinds of infrastructure that we're looking at building. And then the implementation plan is really going to focus on, we tried to group it into 3 main areas: planning, projects, and data. So even though we're finishing the policy, we're really at the place where we're trying to figure out implementation. And I'll talk about that more, but we want to work with everybody early next year with focus group meetings to try to tackle different topics related to implementation. But at a high level, the main things we're thinking about are coordinating with our regional agencies, our MPOs, our RTPAs, our local transit agencies, and our districts. We're trying to get input from all of them. We're developing planning documents, and an example is the district transit plans that I just talked about. Eventually, we also want to make a statewide transit plan, but there are quite a few things that we have to do by a certain time that are mandated in law, like the policy. So we're working on that first, and then we're going to move from there to the statewide transit plan. So we're looking at different plans to guide our work. Then in the project category, we're looking at what projects are priorities in each region, what can we fund, what guidance do we need, like from our division of design, and how can we make a better initial process to prepare people for the encroachment permit process that happens later on. Like, how can we make better communication and better training for both the applicants and the reviewers? And we're also looking at maintenance of transit facilities, like when would Caltrans maintain something versus when would we have an agreement with our partners to maintain something? And that's one of the topics that we'll be working on in the spring. And then for data, there's a lot of good data that our Division of Data and Digital Services has already started working on. And so we're trying to understand what that is, and we're trying to use it so that we can see how can we use that to inform our need, like our identifying transit needs. And we'll also use it when we go to adopt transit performance measures, which is another thing that SB 960 requires. And it's another topic that we are planning to hold a focus group on. So the planning, projects, and data, those are all things we're looking at as we try to work out how to incorporate transit more into our work at Caltrans. And then kind of going back to the policy. So where we're at with the policy is that in August, we had the public comment period. That was probably the last time that you guys saw it. And we received 175 comments during the public comment period from 39 organizations across the state. After that public comment period, it went through an internal review process, and we received 249 comments as a result of that process. And so now we're trying to take all that feedback and finalize it. It's actually with executive for review, and our goal is to finalize it by January 1st of 2026 because that's the deadline in statute. So for just trying to look at some of the feedback that we got in the public comment period and how we incorporated that. We tried to summarize it. I know it's hard to see on this slide, but overall, the top concerns that we heard were just making sure that we're collaborating with our local partners and transit agencies and making sure that we're committing to doing that. Making sure that we're doing everything that 960 says. There's a lot of different requirements in there, and people want to make sure that we're planning to do everything it says. And then a lot of the comments had to do with implementation, and so we're going to address those as part of the implementation process. But that's a high-level look at the feedback we got. This is just the public comment feedback.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to ask a question. What numbers and where did you get the community engagement? Where did that come from?
Unity engagement.
Because you're getting, the summary of your engagement. So like, how are you quantifying your engagement?
Oh, this is just taking all the comments we got and like breaking them into categories. But the way that we're trying to engage with people, other than just looking at how we can change the words of the policy itself based on what they said, is we're actually going back and we're in the process right now of meeting with everyone who commented on the policy. So we offered at least one meeting to everyone who commented on the policy to follow up with them in person or virtually and just talk to them more like one-on-one, get their thoughts, let them know what we changed in the policy and that kind of thing. So we're trying to engage with our commenters like that.
So you're using more of a direct approach versus just an overall report? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're not necessarily making a report about what we did to engage with our public commenters, but the process so we're not like writing down this is what we did in response to all the public comment. I mean, we actually are, but that we're just doing that internally. We're not doing that publicly. But what we are doing is that we're talking to everyone directly, yeah. So it's more of like a one-on-one type thing.
And I guess this session that you're giving us is high view, overview. Are you collecting input from us today in regards to what we feel would be something substantial for this project, or is this something that's already been vetted out and is moving forward?
I definitely want to like take back whatever if you have comments on the policy, then I want to hear what those are, and I'll see if I can make changes to address them, or we might have already made changes to address them. So if you reviewed the policy and you want to make a comment about that, then definitely I'd want to hear what that is. We're starting to get to the point where it's going to be harder to make changes, but I'll see what I can do. And also, we might have already addressed it since the last time you reviewed it.
Thank you.
This is Peggy. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, go ahead, Peggy.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm already enjoying it very much and feel like I'm learning a lot. And what I'd like to know is that in August, we did get a presentation about this, and we made suggestions about, specifically calling out disability accessibility in this, and how how in ensuring that disability accessibility was in the high level language. And I see so Hannah, just so you know, I'm blind. I mean, I'm sight impaired, so I have some vision. So I'm seeing a little pie chart and other things on the screen, but I'm not really, quite able to read what's there. So I'm curious, um, did disability accessibility as an area, a topic area in how you guys are thinking of equity? Do you know if that is something, because equity is quite large, it's quite a substantial area depending on, who you talk with, I suppose. But I'm just curious, if accessibility is called out or is a piece of this, because as transit is, that policy is written and implementation happens and whatnot, how people access buses on the highway system, or all of these aspects of access are crucial, that so that a lot of people can participate in the service. So I'm wondering what you know about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say that we recognize that access for people with disabilities and like ADA compliance is really important. So we are thinking about that as we start to move towards implementation. And there is language about accessibility for people with disabilities in the policy. And there's also a reference to a previous Caltrans director's policy related to ADA. And so right now that language is in there. It's not finalized, so it's still everything in there is still subject to change until it gets completely finalized. But right now it's in there.
Okay, I guess while I'm here, I'll just say that, where things are located in a policy can be really telling as to the sort of hierarchy of importance, So I think that I haven't read this. Uh, um, so, I don't know where things sit. But I guess what I'll say is that a lot of times, ADA is the last thing mentioned, or, in a list of information given, or groups given people with disabilities and disability access is, you know, often the very, very last thing on a list, or last item on a list. And I think that it would be wise and useful to planners and anybody else looking at this, to if it, depending on where it is in the hierarchy, or in the order, I think that it's important to elevate these ideas, because ADA compliance is crucial. Um, but we could very likely look a little above and beyond ADA compliance. So I'll stop now, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And I'll take it back and I'll see what we can do about what you're saying. There's one thing I'll say is that after the public comments and the internal comments, the policy got way longer with a lot more detail in it. And then it went through our legal review and it got way shorter with a lot less detail in it. And so and a lot of those things that we did have in there, we just decided to put into the implementation instead. But our policies are supposed to be high level and setting a vision. What you're saying is part of our vision. Let me take it back and see if I can do that.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Peggy. Michelle Rousey, member Michelle Rousey, you're recognized.
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Very low,
Yeah.
Michelle, but we can hear you.
Ditto what Peggy just brought up, but anytime we're looking at policy changes and how things are implemented around not only ADA but access, I worry about how it's going to be implemented in the language, like Peggy was bringing up, but also I'm wondering if in this, I've seen so many times where there's big policy changes made, and then there's no funding to implement them, and they get left out on the thing, and we're still looking at those and how to implement them because there was no funding cost analysis done for implementation. And especially when it comes around ADA and access issues for seniors and people with disabilities. And I'm wondering, has that been addressed? And if not, and where in it is the language that asserts that ADA and access issues are going to be implemented right along with everything else? Thank you.
Our department has requirements for ADA, and so those will be followed. Funding is a concern because SB 960 didn't allocate additional funds for transit. It just said Caltrans, do more transit wherever feasible, wherever you can, do it and integrate it more into what you're doing. And we're trying to do that, but it is complicated because we have limited funds already. We have eligibility requirements for each of our funding sources, and we don't have a lot of funds set aside specifically for transit. The funds that we have are mainly for planning, but not for project delivery. So there is a funding question that we're trying to work on to see what we can do. But we will be doing ADA compliance for sure. And where we can, I know that we want to do as much to support access for people with disabilities as we can, even if it's more than the ADA compliance. But we have a minimum standard that we will be following.
Okay, thank you. I just, I think when we support new policy changes that we, in like when we tried to do the needs assessment, when it came to seniors and people with disabilities and their in the needs assessment, the numbers just weren't there. And figuring out what the cost of that will be going forward, like other costs in transit, you guys know. So when the counties are doing their needs assessment over the next year, how can you guys utilize some of that information so that, when we look at policy changes in the future, that we have a needs assessment and cost effectiveness of what it's going to cost to make some things and these changes in at the implementation stage. Those costs need to be up front, and so it doesn't just leave you as an agency hanging for the costs and not understanding what those costs might be. I have true concern over that with any program that doesn't have at least an initial cost assessment of what it's going to take to make these things implemented. So thank you for your time.
And if I can just respond to that quickly, through the district transit plans, we have a needs assessment methodology that the transit agencies and districts agreed on. And we are going to use that to create an initial project list of Caltrans-led projects on the state highway system that we could do. But we're also going to do a cost estimate for what that would cost. And then we're going to look at the eligible fund sources that we have. So we are trying to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Peggy, is that an old hand or do you have another question or feedback? And you are muted, Peggy. So I don't know if you're speaking, but you're muted. Just want to make sure you don't have a question or feedback.
Apologies. I just want to continue listening to the presentation. Sorry, I think I missed something, but anyway,
Yeah, no worries. I wanted to add really quick, I had the opportunity to read the policy, and I do want to highlight that there's only one mention about ADA, compliance, and then there's wording in there that says, that folks with that in order to meet the ADA compliance, folks need to have destination access and accessibility, but there's no real intentional language that shows that, how we're going to implement and enforce this policy within the local and regional agencies. And so my question to that really quick and to piggyback on everything that our members have said, are we able to add language that it is the responsibility of maybe the overall Caltrans, the state Caltrans folks, to ensure that then the regional, the districts and the local agencies are enforcing this policy when it comes to ADA compliance and accessibility, as it was mentioned by our members? Are we able to do that?
I can see what language we can add to the policy at this point. I'll ask that. We can direct our districts in terms of what they do, but we don't have a span of control over the transit agencies to enforce that kind of thing for them.
Okay, so then I guess my question is, what is the intent of this policy? Is it just that Caltrans, the state Caltrans jurisdiction needs to have something in writing, but then the direct impact to our residents and to our folks that need ADA access really comes down from the local transit authorities? So then, like, I guess I want to know what the point of this policy is then at this point.
Yeah. This policy is really for Caltrans, setting a vision for what Caltrans can do, because we have span of control over our own right of way. So we're saying at Caltrans for the state highway system, which we operate and maintain, we're going to integrate transit wherever practicable and feasible. That's what the bill language. And so that is our span of control. That's the area that we can decide within the scope of our eligible funding, what we can do. What we're also trying to do is work more with the transit agencies to understand their needs, and to try to work with them to see how what we can do can support what they're trying to do. But we don't regulate the transit agencies, so the work that they're doing is the policy is not speaking to the work that they're doing.
Okay, yeah, and I'll wait for my questions. I see EAC Chair Armis Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little confused, and I'm trying to grapple, the thought of the fact that you're saying that you're basically told spend the money but without any affect, because you're not going to have any legs to move it. So you created this document, got the needs from, I don't know, you were able to create some type of a matrix of what these needs are and what these improvements are on these given corridors, and subject to funding, these are some of the possible projects that are going to be coming down the pipeline. But then they're not connected to the agencies. That just kind of doesn't make sense to me. And then the other part of this is when you're saying that you're going to try to bring back that language to the powers of be, it befuddles me to think that there's only one inclusion, and it's as a happenstance, not really like an intentional portion of the writing or the policy. And I know this because when you're not able to say it in a way that is intentional and meaningful and is actually encapsulating everyone, that is either senior or child, access to all, especially those that are with limited mobility, and how do we embed that justice piece into that? And so really what I'm asking is, what are we here doing with you today as far as our contributions? We want to be able to help and be participatory in a way that's going to be of benefit for not only yourselves, but also for the state. And I'm kind of confused. So I guess I need a little bit more clarity.
Yeah. Let me try to answer your questions like in the order that, or respond to your comments in the order that you said them. So for the first comment, we haven't actually identified all the needs yet. That's something that we will be doing through the district transit plans over the next year. We started doing that in 2025, but we're just starting that process. For the connection to the local transit, we are trying to do that. The reason that we're working with the transit agencies in the district transit plans is so that we can see where their systems are, where their needs are, and how what we could do could tie into their needs and where their infrastructure already is. So we're definitely connecting with them and not making a system that's just disjointed from what they're doing. We're trying to utilize all of our transit data to build stuff that is going to support what's already there and what the locals need. In terms of where the policy is at, I think you do have meaningful opportunities for engagement in this policy, other than the public comment period and the meetings that we're having now. It's true that this policy is nearing the end of the development period, and I don't have the final say of what goes in there, so I don't want to commit to doing something that I don't have the authority to do. But I can bring it back and see what we can do. We do have the definition of access in the policy and of underserved communities. But I will take this back and see if there's additional language that we can add. I think where this group has meaningful opportunities to contribute is during the development of the implementation plan, because our policies at Caltrans, all of the directors' policies, not just this one, they're supposed to set the high-level vision or direction for the department. But where we really talk about like, this is how this is going to work out, this is how we're going to do this, is in our implementation plans. And so starting in January, we're going to have a series of focus group meetings about different key topics related to implementation. So we'll have a meeting on the encroachment permit process, performance metrics, funding, maintenance, design, and we would love to work with you during those focus group meetings to try to hear what you have to say and incorporate it into our plans. I think that could be a really meaningful place to engage. And also, I'm happy to come back and provide another update next year about where things are at and also kind of talk to you about ideas that you have for transit implementation. I think that would be great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Hannah. So one more, I know you have more slides, I'm sorry. When is the deadline, or I guess, are folks still able to provide comments on the policy, or is that done?
Public comment period closed on August 18th. If you have comments, I think that the most practical thing to do might be to email them to me, like in one email, or I can just try to capture them from what you're saying right now. And then I can see if we can incorporate them into the policy.
All right, thank you. You may continue with the presentation. Apologies.
I don't think I have that many more slides. This, I think, is the last slide, and it's talking about the implementation plan. So it's the stakeholder collaboration in January to March, and then we'll develop the document in the spring, and we'll start finalizing it in the summer. So that's our tentative timeline on implementation. That's the end. Yeah, these are my staff. Josh Pulverman is the chief of the Transit Planning Office.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. I don't know, Camille or Hannah, do you know if this policy is going up for final approval with the CTC, or is there another body that will approve this?
Usually our policies are approved by the director in CalSTA. So that's, yeah.
All right.
And like Hannah said, there'll be opportunities next year to participate in focus groups on different topics pertaining to the transit policy implementation plan. And Hannah or one of the other team members can come back in the early spring with updates on that. So opportunities for continued engagement.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any other comments from our members, or shall we move on to public comments on this item? All right, seeing none, are there any public comments?
Not seeing any requests from our public to make comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Oh, I see member Michelle Rousey.
I really liked your first slide. I like to see that there's people with disabilities that are included. Just for Peggy's knowledge, there was a bus with a power wheelchair being was entering the bus, and that imagery is good, and always would like to see more of that type of imagery, so that we're showing that we're doing access across the board for seniors and people with disabilities. So thank you for that image.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that that resonated with you. And one thing I was thinking is maybe if this group is interested, one of the focus groups that we could have could be around equity and accessibility. So if we worked on something like that, then I would probably reach out to you to see if there's any information or materials that you want to bring to that focus group meeting, because we're working with different subject matter experts depending on the topic for each one of those focus group meetings. So if you wanted to be our SMEs for like a focus group meeting on accessibility and equity, then we could always set up a focus group specific to that.
This is Peggy, if I may. I think that would be great. I think that would be, really useful in sort of elevating this topic area. I also think if it can happen, it would be really good and very interesting to get somebody from your ADA law department. In all the meetings that I've been to in the EAC for the past year, almost 2 years, I've never met any person at Caltrans or any of the other agencies. So, but I'll just stick with Caltrans right now, who has any kind of disability or any subject matter expertise in disability access. So it would be really great to to uh, to sort of understand, who or how this is all decided. So you've got lawyers, and they are clearly sort of shortening things and taking things away. I think it'd be kind of interesting to have one of them come to this because, you know, come to our equity/disability accessibility input session that I think would be super useful to have. Because what we're this is probably the fourth or fifth session where we've been approached, and I know that all of us really, really appreciate these opportunities to give input. But this is, we've had a very similar discussion with different people throughout the time that I've been on the EAC, basically saying the same thing, that, we want to see disability access elevated. We want to see, funding for that somehow asked for. Like it feels like we're asking for funding for all kinds of stuff, which is great. And we need to be asking for direct funding to include how to, build in this accessibility that we think is so important. So I think there are lots of pieces, and Hannah, I gotta say, this is probably not the most fun thing to be sort of experiencing with us, peppering you with questions, but I want to say, I think that Caltrans should really be thinking a lot more about this as time passes. It's 2025. The ADA was signed into law in 1990, so that's 35 years ago. And California, we are ahead in a lot of ways, but we seem to be dragging our feet in many other ways. And I'm hoping, I do see a lot of younger, honestly, if I may be, just say this out loud, hopefully it won't offend anybody. But I do see that the youth and younger people really are bringing this stuff forward a lot, and I appreciate it. So if we do have a meeting, if we do have another input session, I think it would be really good for you to bring people with you from Caltrans that can really sort of address some of these questions that we have. The end. Thank you.
Sure. I'll try to make that happen.
Cool. That'd be cool.
Thank you, Peggy. Member Michelle Rousey, you have your hand up.
Like what Peggy just said. I'm wondering
to 20 participants.
to a whole other level is what is the criteria, if we're going to bring those lawyers in who are like critiquing the language, which is fine, they should, but also, what's being lost from the language that we know that needs to be there that is taken away. I saw this happen with the master plan on aging for transportation. It was gutted, and we had to like jump through hoops to get some of it added back. I don't want to see that with this. I don't want us to see that language disappear that we know needs to be there, and then it never reappear. So yeah, let's get those, whoever's changing the language, in making that a permanent change. Can we talk to them? Can we work with them to see if, that we can do it right the first time and not have to like jump through hoops later on? So thank you.
Yeah, I'll see what we can do about the language, but I think that affecting change is what you're trying to do. And I think to do that, because the vision that is laid out in the policy is by nature high level because of the fact that it's a director's policy. But accessibility and like the issues that you're bringing forward are things that get worked out when we deliver projects, when we plan and deliver a project. And so for that, I don't think that there's anyone at Caltrans that if you asked, do you want to build projects that aren't accessible? Or, do you not want to, like, no, everyone wants to consider the needs of people with disabilities and make infrastructure that's accessible for them. I think that we're still trying to figure out how to incorporate transit more fully into our project delivery and our maintenance. Where we really are trying to work that out right now. And we're also trying to figure out how do we work with transit agencies when we have a limited span of control, so we don't control a lot of we don't control what they do. And so we're trying to be good partners to them too. So I think that it would be good to have a focus group where we can get together and think about, as we think about how to build these projects and plan these projects, how do we make sure that we're doing what we can for accessibility? And there's always going to be, I think, funding challenges. But that's the case with everything. So we'll work through what we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Obviously, this is a very important issue for a lot of us, especially in rural areas and other disadvantaged or underserved communities that have been overlooked uh, by funding, whether it's that the cities or counties are not going after the funding, or whether it is that, Caltrans is not engaging folks at the local level, and it's always an issue. And so that's why this is so important. We see policy in the EAC committee as our way to really ensuring that there's intentionality around not only the implementation but the enforcement of it. So if in areas around the state they're not being compliant with ADA access or other community engagement input, then with these policies we can enforce as community members to ensure that these agencies are doing their job. So thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you to our members for highlighting important issues. So for time's sake, we're going to move on to tab 6, update on Transit Transformation Task Force, and we'll give the floor over to Hunter Owens.
Thank you, everyone. Hunter Owens, California State Transportation Agency staff. Do you all want to present, or should I present from my screen?
Would you be comfortable presenting?
I'm totally fine. I've just sent you a request to do so.
Perfect.
All right, 1 second. All right, can folks see the presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So this is just we're coming back here with this presentation from where we were a while ago as we're beginning the process of wrapping up the Transit Transformation Task Force. Just to reiterate, the Transit Transformation Task Force was really an opportunity presented by the legislature and the administration as we, with SB 125, really focusing on like what would it take to do transformational change across transit, for the entire state. What would it take to achieve that? Looking at these big, broad visions. And we really got to spend 18 months working with a number of stakeholders, which I will detail in a later slide, answering this big question. What does it take to achieve transformational change in transit? Why is this important? Really looking at our CARB scoping plan, our VMT reduction goals, and as I always like to lightly joke, like what's the greatest VMT reduction success in the history of California's policymaking? It was the COVID pandemic, but what we've seen is transit is really the thing that we love to see driving that VMT reduction along with land use and a whole bunch of other things. So that's really exciting. And also, what's it going to take to kind of reduce some of the historical trends we've seen in transit, to see like really, quite large ridership gains, in line with what our goals are. And just kind of again reducing the trends that we've seen starting in the early 2010s of, declining ridership in transit. So how do we go about answering the questions of what will it take to achieve transformational change in transit? First, we appointed 25 members to our Transit Transformation Task Force. So really thankful for all of our members who joined us to present that. We had 13 public meetings of just the TTTF. We also had 18 TWG members who had unique expertise on deeply technical topics. Whether that was TWG members from more transit agencies who have deep operational expertise, or folks like AARP who have unique insights into the lived experience of seniors. So that was really great. And then we also did a large number of interviews with subject matter experts, consulted over 100, and did a bunch of analyses and data collection efforts. So with that, we covered a number of topics inside these reports. So this was kind of the roadmap that we covered over the last few months, and just kind of want to reiterate how they sort of work together of having the big directional transformational transit transformation task force. We also had the technical working groups. With that, I'm going to kind of just go on to where we have sort of landed as we are working to finalize the report. We have 5 principles, 40 strategies, and about 100 recommendations, mostly to the legislature to consider. These include some of the required topics that we had to cover, including new options for revenue sources, reforming the Transportation Development Act, transit agency oversight and reporting, capital construction costs and timelines, fleet and asset management, workforce recruitment, retention and development, a safe and clean environment for passengers and operators. Providing fast, reliable, and connected transit services, so doing stuff like transit priority, service and fare coordination, scheduling, mapping, and wayfinding. And one I really want to highlight that based on some of the engagement we did with our task force members is our 5th principle: provide transit that is accessible and easy to use for all, with recommendations around accessible transportation and the transit needs of older adults and persons with disabilities. And then our final principle: developing high-quality public transit systems to support complete communities. I'll highlight that the 4th principle that I just highlighted was not one that was actually required by the legislation. You'll see the ones that were required by the legislation have those numbers like 1F, 1E. That is the section of the legislation we're responding to. But because the legislature did give us an opportunity to really expand that topic, we were able to really make some good recommendations on how we can be transformational, not just on your traditional fixed route bus services and rail services, but accessible transportation and really meeting the needs of all communities. So we're really excited about that. With that, I promised I'd be quick on this presentation so we could take questions. And I did just want to flag for the members of the task force, we are in the process of finalizing the report. So excuse me, not members of the task force. I'm very used to presenting to that group. Members of the EAC, I apologize. I did want to flag that we may not be able to answer all your questions about sort of where the report is right now as we await that finalization, but we'll take anything and get back to you when we are able to. So with that, I will stop sharing and take any questions that members of the EAC may have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hunter, for the presentation. Just a quick question before I go to our member comments. I guess, who's the body that gets to decide on this, I guess, updating this task force?
So the task force is concluded. We're just releasing, CalSTA is in the process of releasing a report to the legislature, and then the legislature can consider the recommendations in that.
Okay, so then if folks want to, maybe provide some more input or comments, can they reach out to their local legislators so then, they can be aware of this report, or how does that work?
At this point, it's sort of above, we've fulfilled our statutory duty here. So yeah, they can certainly engage with their local legislatures. The report will be done and completed, but they'll be continuing an ongoing dialogue as, legislation and the administrators kind of sort of consider the report and look at it. But at a certain point, we are done. And then it's up to sort of where the legislature wants to take it, because they were the ones, and the administration, because they requested the report. So we're just delivering the report in line with those expectations.
Okay, got it. Member Howard Wong, you have the floor.
I'm not getting anything from Howard. Might be on my end.
Howard, you can speak. I think you're good to speak.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think my laptop froze a little bit. Sorry. Transit transformation, it almost seems like every year that word transformation, you could almost call it transit futuristic because of the rapidly advancing technology of transit and mobility. Um, so many of the issues that we, have been concerned about, uh, mobility for the physically challenged, for seniors, for youth, low-income people. We're seeing this rapid change in mobility where some transit prognosticators predict that most mass transit will be autonomous by 2050. And many of our planning reports, Bay Area, Plan Bay Area 2050 plus, and other regional planning documents may not be taking into account that rapid mobility revolution, digital management of transit and roads, autonomous vehicles, autonomous transit. We have flying taxis being tested soon in the Bay Area. And just the coordination of regional agencies alone using technology, artificial intelligence. These things are changing not just in decades, they're changing year by year. So I think when we talk about transit transformation, I think we have to, include in that the potential of just simple changes we're seeing in technology.
Yeah, absolutely appreciate that. To quote the esteemed Yogi Berra, as they always say, predictions are hard, especially about the future. So with that, we did our best to address what we and the task force brought us, including some of those really rapid advancements in AI, autonomous driving. But I will want to say the report is focused on transit and really grounded in the reality of the communities that we serve today. So as we finalize this report and these recommendations, we definitely look towards that future eye, but know that technology is not a panacea for all that, all of the challenges we are facing, and really trying to ground any vision to transform transit, not in, a particular technology or a particular community or a particular space or a particular group of people, but really those foundational principles, especially in alignment with our CalStuff core 4 priorities. So, I don't want to say those technologies are out there. They're definitely there, but we really want to make sure that any use of those technologies and what we do going forward, and how this report approaches it is really grounded in our principles and priorities and not just technology for technology's sake. But appreciate the feedback.
All right. Thank you, Member Wong. Any other members that want to speak on this item?
I would
Hold
love
the open
to.
participant. Oh, why? And now raised.
Yeah. Peggy?
Hey, well, thank you for that. That was very quick, and I probably missed most of it since it was in writing. But I guess my question is, you're telling us that this is done. It's a done thing. It's going to be presented to the legislature. And when is that happening?
Sometime in the next few weeks few weeks within
Like
the
after
next
the
week or two.
holidays, kind of a thing? Like
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
Okay, great. And then so it's fascinating to me. So yeah, so we basically you're just reporting. So we don't really have a lot of necessarily input. I think we gave some input, a few months ago. I think you presented to us like in May or something, I want to say.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
I'd have to check my calendar to be
But
100%
anyway,
sure,
yeah, something
but
like that. Whatever. Anyway,
yeah.
so you don't really need anything from us at this point. You're just telling us that this is done and you're done. And and do we have a copy of it somewhere so that we can look at it I mean, I guess the question is what does the legislature do with it? What happens? Like what happens?
That's a great question for the legislature. It's not a question for us. We, are directed to do it. Generally, with these types of reports, they are then received and filed and may be used as inspiration or consideration for future reforms, bills, et cetera. But that's part of the process. But you've got to ask, again, it's a question more for the ledge than myself on what they would like to do with this.
So really quick to piggyback on Peggy's question, who should we be reaching out if we want to find more information about this?
The report itself, you're welcome to reach out to myself and the CalSTA team, and we can provide.
Yeah,
I just think it's interesting, and I appreciate you presenting.
Yeah, thank you. But more on like what are the next steps? Like who would help us manage the next steps after the report's submitted?
Again, I would defer to some of the folks here, and I know my colleague Allison Joe had to depart earlier on how CalSTA typically approaches these issues. But again, the TTTF effort, sort of concludes with this report. So there is not necessarily like a next step that CalSTA is pursuing after we get the report out the door. So I would not say from a CalSTA perspective, we don't really have next steps per se. And really, again, it would be the legislative process that would be taking over. So the typical, and I do not know how the EAC typically engages the legislature off the top of my head.
Hunter, if I could just step in for a sec.
Yeah.
I was kind of monitoring, but I'm apologized. I have a different, I had something that I need to actually get out the door today. So I am trying to not be as multitasking, but I caught a little bit of that last conversation. I think both the chair and some of the subcommittee members had questions about what the next steps might be. I'm going to reiterate it just to make sure I understand the question. What the next steps for the subcommittee and the EAC more broadly would be once the task force report is actually released. And what I would say is, Hunter went through the content of the recommendations without going into some of the specifics. And once the report is public, we're able to I'll send that through to EAC as public material. And what happens there is that it goes to the legislature, and there are many things that could be done with it. And as a public document, some of that is intended for legislative use to be able to propose legislation. A lot of it is intended to highlight some really big gaps and needs that have been covered in the contents and the conversations of the task force, so that many of you have also acknowledged and kind of have brought up as we talk through all of these issues around transit. And I think what we would want to do is identify some very, because it's such a big report, think about where there are some areas where the EAC or this subcommittee around transportation planning and program guidance can better be differently involved. And that's something that we probably are not able to quite get into at this meeting, but this is a good point in time just to check in, right? We talked in June, and in this month we can probably just kind of do it as a point in time. We're kind of sorry and bummed that we can't talk about more active things, but I think at this point that's kind of where we want to be. I'll pause there to see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Allison. I know member Michelle Rousey had her hand up. Do you have a question, Michelle?
More of a comment and kind of question. Is there some sort of like vision, or that maybe we can use some of our vision from the EAC to push forward this in a way that's productive, not only for the legislators, but for needed change around this, and how can we use not only our vision as a committee as a whole, but us as a committee to kind of push forward some of our ideas about access and other things around this. I'm just wondering what are our next steps, and how can we give it some focus on where we want to go.
Yeah. Member Rousey, that's a really great question. Again, I think for next steps, I want to make sure that this committee is the Equity Advisory Committee, and supporting these 3 state agencies, that we're really thoughtful about how we work with the agencies under this hat that you wear, right? You all wear different hats, to make sure that how you all choose to get involved in legislative advocacy is not directly related to this body. However, you all in your individual hats and your multiple hats do that in different ways. And I know that that's a challenge, because it's almost like you have to it's like having split personalities in some ways, right? And so, but for this work, what we can do is give you the public information and the public report, provide some areas where there are things that we are hearing your concern. I think the conversation on the transit policy was also really helpful in some of those similar comments. But with the task force report, that's where you as individuals and potentially as committee or subcommittee members could hear more information, and could potentially, in terms of how the task force recommendations are implemented, there may be a role for you. And I'm sorry, I'm really vague about it. But at this point, thanks, Michelle, I appreciate the thumbs up. We're just trying to be able to give you as much information as we can now, so that when we do have that point that we bring forward, you guys are already aware of where we are, right? Hunter's given a couple of presentations, but he knows that the EAC is really interested in XYZ. So as part of CalSTA's work, we may come back and have, maybe not to a subcommittee, maybe not to the full committee, but we may ask for participation in other advisory opportunities as we start implementing some of those recommendations, right? It's kind of, we're bringing you along to make sure that there's understanding where we are. I totally get the frustration that it's not all these things, but we'll get there.
Also wondering how, in our individual work that we could actually help push some of that along too. So some of us do work, as you said, in other spaces that and possibly push this. I'm following what you guys are doing, and I just want to say that, if that's needed or wanted in other spaces at the state level, please let me know. I'm happy to push it with my DACLAC meeting, with my transportation groups there.
Yeah.
We do walk a fine line. Absolutely, and I understand that probably more than a lot of people, but yeah. But yeah, I think just keeping us updated on things and where you're at and when this actually comes out, that would be great. At this point, I've been following it for months through other meetings. So I appreciate you bringing it to the stage. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Member Michelle. I also would like for it to be on the record that I know in part of the report, there's a lot of mentioning about, of course, the challenges, loss of funding, loss of ridership, and, accessibility to reliable transit and all of that. And I know somewhere in the language, there's sort of like, in my perception, some blaming of the lack of ZV infrastructure, therefore causing more, costly upgrades of infrastructure for transit. But I would like for there to be, if it's possible and still doable, to also, in the report mention that the folks are not using transit because there's this sort of like push of having more and more cars on the road rather than creating more walkable communities where transit is, more reliable and there's more safer infrastructure. Because I know in the communities that I serve, we still have bus stops and transit services in rural communities that don't even have sidewalks. So, for example, right now we had heavy rains and all of those bus stops got flooded. And so nobody was able to use, transit during these rainy days. So folks like lost opportunities to go to work, lost opportunities to go to school. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that we also have to mention climate change on here as a challenge, and how do we meet the greenhouse gas emission goals without blaming it on that and saying we need to be more mindful in creating more walkable communities. So somewhere along those lines, if we are able to add that to the report, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll as we finalize, and I'll just highlight in our earlier draft materials, stuff like the lack of sidewalks and bus shelters is very clearly highlighted. The rise in traffic congestion. I would say the reports, the drafts have spent a lot of time talking about how one of the key drivers in the decline in ridership has just been the decline in bus speeds due to additional congestion. Buses are on average in the state of California, about 10 to 15% slower than they were in 2010, which means, everyone, it costs more money to run worse service. So definitely, I think all of those points are, somewhere in the report as we finalize it. And, there's a lot of challenges out there, but definitely I think we hit those pretty well. And you can see that in the drafts.
All right, thank you so much. I believe we only have 3 minutes, so do we have any public comments on this item, Justin?
Chair, I would love to give comment as a member too.
I'm
on bike, so I'm not able to raise my hand, but really quickly, just to add comment on on the liquidity, for the cycle advocacy, if we're wanting to reduce VMT and increase bicycle, and we had a 35% increase of 3+, we're going to need infrastructure on buses. And where does that come in terms of policy? Last night, we were talking about class 4, where the community wanted them transferred over to class 2. Luckily, the cycle advocates were there to show up. But one of the mayor's comments was, how is Caltrans going to put forth this policy on complete streets and pushing forward class 4 when some of these newer projects are doing sharrows in class 2? And I thought, ooh, what a valuable opportunity to like really put forth a policy that speaks directly to legislators, to embolden them and saying, yeah, we're taking a leadership role. Thank you for that accountability. We're working on it. And then also, how do we actually do the infrastructure? I keep mentioning triage. I'm going to say it again, triage. Some of the high ridership points, so Sacramento outbound on some of these holidays, they don't have enough bike racks. So what happens? They're transitioning out those luggage carts, meaning they asked me to lock my bike to a disabled chair. I shared that I was uncomfortable with that. The conductor says, by his decree, do it. So I did it. Disabled folks came on and were upset with me and asked me to unlock it. I shared what the conductor said. And they made the disabled folks move so I could keep my bike locked there. But what could have been done is I could have moved it to the storage in the back, but they didn't want to, right? Why? Because they probably were worried about time. So infrastructure there. And then also it happened again last week where they asked me to lock it to the chair. I put my foot down and I said, I will not. I called Amtrak, told them, we should not be putting cyclists against disabled folks. This should be something that we needed to be talking about. And the conductor yelled at me and said, well, the other option is you don't ride. And I said, unfortunately, in this circumstance, I shouldn't have been allowed to ride because that disabled person deserves a seat just like I do, and I can take my bike apart. So these are the things that we could encourage and embolden some of our transit operators with some internal policy on, can we just get some infrastructure? Can we just get some grace on load time so the conductors can feel positive about loading it up in the bike back rather than forcing folks to attach to the side? So just some Q4 commentary. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Member Lisa. Appreciate those comments. Are there any public comments, Justin, on the line?
Not seeing any requests from any public attendees to comment at this time. I do see Member Martinez has her hand raised. Might want to check with her to see if she's still entitled to comment.
Yes. Sorry, Member Peggy Martinez. Okay. Hand is down, I guess. Okay, so wrapping up, tab 7, closing and next steps. I guess right now I would like to welcome any members that would like to add items for the next planning meeting. I think it's important that we voice those opportunities now, and then also, keeping in mind that you can always reach out to staff. But I know Member Randy had some items, so we can get those on the record so we can put them on our next agenda. That'd be great.
Thank you, Chair Gonzalez. Good afternoon, everyone. Member Randy Torres Van Vleck. Wanted to share that I've been in touch with Chair Gonzalez and the staff and Circulate San Diego for potential future presentation earlier in the new year, January, about a report that they did called the Powerless Brokers. And they did an analysis looking at how California and all the agencies can reduce the timeline to build transit more rapidly. They've got some good policy recommendations, did a lot of research. So the report is available now. It came out a few months ago. They did a presentation to the CTC members at a dinner in San Diego a couple months ago. And so we're working on having them come and present to this committee in late January. And so that'd be a great opportunity, I think, to chat about how we can build transit more efficiently in the state.
Awesome. Thank you, Member Randy. I will give that my blessing. So I don't know, staff, if we're able to accommodate that for the next meeting, please. All right, I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if you wanted a verbal response.
Yes, sorry. I should have mentioned that. So yeah, please, if we can add that to our next agenda, that'd be great. So at this time, are there any further comments, concerns, or anything that members want to highlight? If not, we will adjourn. All right, seeing none. Do we have to take a motion to adjourn, or are we good to adjourn?
No motion needed. You're good to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Have a good day, everybody.
All right, thank you all
Everyone.
so much. Have a great day, and we'll see you all in December at our EAC meeting.
Thank you.
Travel safe.